and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Juggernaut, and today we're going to do a gun rant. Look, I'm fairly sick, and I took a bunch of painkillers just to be able to record this, because I read a couple of things online, and it kind of rustled my jimmies, right? So, the gist of the matter is, pistols are treated as far more deadly than most hunting rifles, assault rifles, whatever you want to call them. Speaking of, I need to make a quick little digression before I continue talking about this. Because, you see, in my country, we have the following system of classifying weapons, and that's the system I'm going to be using because that's the system I'm most comfortable with. There are these types of weapons, right? There are so-called personal defense weapons. These are pistols and revolvers. In my country, they aren't banned, but they are almost impossible to get, because you need a justified reason for owning one, and to get a justified reason, you need to find a unicorn, basically, right? It's almost impossible to get. Speaking of impossible to get weapons, automatic rifles are banned in most of the Western world, which, alright, I suppose. I understand that. I don't really, but alright. I don't think that should be a thing. I don't think that there should be a blanket ban on any type of weapon any type of weapon that's not, explosive or nuclear or something along those lines. But any type of firearm, I don't think there should be a blanket ban on them. But anyways, let's not get too deep into this. We're here to talk about pistols, and that's what they're classified like in my country. There are also other weapon classifications, or other classes of weapons. Different countries use different systems, of course, but I'm going to be using mine because that's the one I'm most comfortable with. I think I already said that. Either way. Other types of weapons are hunting rifles. These are shotguns, basically. Double-barrel shotguns, pump-action shotguns, semi-automatic shotguns, any type of shotgun. Carbines, these are what, in the US, you might call hunting rifles. So, bolt-action rifles, semi-automatic rifles. An AR-15 is a carbine under our law, and, in most other classifications as well, it's not an assault rifle. An assault rifle doesn't exist. An assault rifle describes how you are using a weapon, not what the weapon is. You can use a pistol to assault a position, and it doesn't make it an assault pistol, it just describes how you're using it. Anyways, it's, the medial of the term assault rifle, it doesn't really exist, is my point. But let's get back to pistols, right? And there's also automatic rifles, automatic weapons, which are completely banned in my country, and like I said, in most of the Western world. Now, here's the thing. I know for a fact that in most European countries, pistols are generally considered, or are, in the law, generally made to appear more lethal and more deadly and more difficult to get than hunting rifles or carbines. It's the same case in my country, it's the same case I know for a fact in Russia. I think France also has a similar problem, where you can buy a hunting rifle with a hunting license, which, for that you need just there's a test you need to go through, there's some conditions you need to fulfill, and if you do, you will get that weapon. For pistols, though, the procedure is a lot more complicated, a lot more ambiguous, and a lot less certain. It's the same in my country, it's the same in many European countries. Why? Well, here's the thing. I think the basic logic behind it was that... the basic logic behind it was that a pistol can be used to conceal carry, and weapons used to conceal carry can be used a lot more easily than quote-unquote assault rifles or carbines or hunting rifles to commit crime. Except that doesn't really make sense if you think about it, right? Here's why it doesn't make sense. If a person is inclined to commit a violent act or an armed robbery, he is not going to give up or stop because he couldn't get his hands on a pistol or a revolver. He will do it with a rifle, he will do it with a knife, he will do it with an illegal weapon 90% of the time. Actually, according to my country's statistics, probably 99.9% of the time. Matter of fact, the only situations in my memory, in the last 20 years or so, where legal weapons have been used, or rather misused, to break the law, is in domestic incidents. Suicides, self-defense may be something along those lines. And yes, self-defense is illegal here in certain scenarios, and you're not allowed just to use self-defense in any way you see fit. I think I made a video about this, or I mentioned this in some of my videos at some point. Doesn't really matter though. Let's not go over that right now. It's a fairly depressing topic. Thing is, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, fair enough, it is more difficult to get, for example, an AK or an AR-15 platform-type rifle or anything along those lines and carry it to the bank and rob a bank there. Except banks aren't robbed with pistols, at least in my experience, most of the time. I think there's been 1 or 2 bank robberies in my life in my country, and they were all conducted with automatic weapons purchased illegally. So the whole bank robbery thing is out the window. What about lethality? Well, obviously, a carbine is more lethal. It's a larger caliber bullet, it has more kinetic energy, it has more penetration, and your body armor is not going to protect you from it. It's pistol ammunition, 3A protection is designed to protect you against pistol ammunition and revolver ammunition, right? 9mm, 45 ACP, 44 Magnum, 357 Magnum, anything along those lines, or anything similar to that, right? So why then are pistols considered to be more lethal and more dangerous? It doesn't make sense from a ballistics standpoint. It doesn't make sense from a crime prevention standpoint either, because, like I said, if someone is inclined to commit a felony or commit a violent act, he's not going to stop because he didn't get the right weapon. Now, does this mean that if he couldn't get a pistol, and for example he gets a knife, then the robbery is going to go a lot better for the victims in question because he doesn't have as lethal of a weapon. He has a knife instead of a firearm. Well, is he going to be easier to stop by armed police officers? Yes. Does that mean it's going to be less violent? Not necessarily. The type of weapon used does not always correlate with the number and amount of victims. Here's the thing. Getting shot at is not pleasant. Wielding a knife around cutting people is also not pleasant for any of the parties involved, really. I'm not comfortable making statements like, yes, people that commit crimes with knives are easier to stop, and they are easier to stop, but those situations are less deadly than people that have handguns. It depends. It depends on the person in question. There have been, knife sprees in metros and stuff. There have been mass shootings. How people use illegal explosives that they make at home to commit acts of terror as well, and yeah, it's difficult to say, but even if that was the reason, let's say that the reason pistols are more banned, more harder to get, etc., considered more lethal, is because what happened is, interesting, is because, those situations where someone goes to rob the local shop or the local, I don't know, what do you call those, local convenience stores or something. If that is the reason we have to ban pistols outright in some situations or in some countries, then that also doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, here's the thing. In order to get a weapon, you need or at least in my country, you need an impeccable record. You literally can't be caught yelling on the street or something. You need to be the perfect citizen, a role model that has never interacted with the police in any capacity that's that's not just administrative. Okay? If your neighbor calls the cops on you for playing music too loud, you can no longer own a weapon for the rest of your life. That's how bad it is. Now, if that's already the law, then why go through the trouble of, everything else? It's not like someone that has acted like that for years and years and years suddenly is going to go and do a 180 in his life. And if he does, it's not something you can predict, and it's not something that literally, probably the situation like that is like 1 in 100,000 or 1 in a million. that's no excuse for the 1 million other people to have their rights and their liberties diminished and contained. It really, really isn't. But I think I'm going a bit off topic here. Let's talk about the actual firearm itself. So, you can conceal carry a pistol, but you can also conceal carry an SMG. You can conceal carry a freaking double-barrel shotgun in your coat. Now, are more armed robberies conducted with pistols or shotguns? Obviously with pistols, because they're easier to... sorry. Because they're easier to conceal, they're easier to use, they're, etc., etc. Here's the thing, though. They're also easier to buy illegally. And nobody seems to be tackling this problem, at least in my country. Other than the obvious control when you cross borders, and, it's scans and etc., etc., but nothing is specifically being done to stop the illegal arms trade, and the law is making it so that good, law-abiding citizens are thinking more and more about purchasing weapons illegally and then just hiding them in their homes because the law is being ridiculous. And it's very easy to buy a pistol legally. So what we're doing is we're treating the problem in the wrong place. It's like, you broke your leg, but they're mending your arm. The problem is the availability of pistols illegally and their usage by people that, should not have a gun. And what they're doing instead is they're stopping people from legally owning guns and taking away people's legally bought and purveyed weapons. And as a result of this, obviously, gun crime has not decreased. Armed robberies have not decreased. Now, to be fair, they're very rare in this country, so, you using the whole statistics argument here is not really viable, but they do happen. Just now, just as much as 15 or 20 years ago. To be fair, there has been a decrease in crime naturally, not due to laws, but due to living standards, due to the world changing, due to an absence of war in these parts for about 20 or so years. A bit over. So yeah, for that reason, crime rate has decreased, obviously. But this doesn't change the fact that we are treating the problem in the wrong place. Instead of going to the root of gun crime and treating that, or going to the heart of why armed robberies with pistols happen, we're banning people from legally owning pistols. Legally owned pistols, which are, at least to my knowledge, rather, have not in my country been used in an armed robbery ever in the last 20 years or so. Maybe there was a case or two that I missed, that I'm not aware of, but this doesn't change the fact that in the vast majority of cases, that's not the, legal weapons are not used to commit crime. Or to commit armed robberies. To commit crime, like I said, they are. Suicide, it's mostly suicide. It's either suicide or, this is going to get very grim, I apologize, or domestic violence. When one member of the family uses his hunting rifle to hurt another member of the family. They are used for that. That does happen. But even then, those are mostly old weapons bought under the old law. And those people have kept them, and they haven't been... let's say that the police force has been lazy and hasn't really checked up on them and to see if they have the right conditions for storing weapons, the right, let's say, mental state for owning a weapon, etc., etc. Mostly here, the case is it's very difficult to get a weapon, but once you do, they leave you alone. Unless you're one of the, 25,000-30,000 people that have been sued to give their weapons back, or literally bullied into giving their weapons back last year, but yeah, that didn't really end well. Anyways, it's an internal state thing that I don't really want to discuss, but the gist of it is some people got very threatening letters mailed to them saying that if they don't return their weapons, they're going to be arrested and stuff like that. I love how the term is return their weapons, like they borrowed them from the government. No, I bought this. This was imported from usually the Czech Republic, or this was produced locally by our local gun factories, and I bought this with my own hard-earned money. There's nothing to return. But that was the phrasing that they used. And the reason is that there are no longer sufficient... you no longer have a sufficiently valid reason for keeping your firearm. That was the justification. Based on what? What was the sufficient reason yesterday that stopped being sufficient now? Nothing in my life or in this country has changed. And that's the argument most people went with, and a good part of them that was willing to take this to court got to keep their weapons. A lot of them, though, couldn't be bothered, and they weren't really passionate about firearms, so they're just like, whatever, here you go. Unfortunate, but that was the case. And again, the reason I'm mentioning this, it was mostly pistols. Guys with hunting rifles, not affected. Has this changed anything? No. No. Matter of fact, we had a spike in gun crime after that. And most of the weapons used, again, hunting rifles, shotguns, carbines, etc., etc. I think it's the same thing in the United States, right? Where a lot of the time, most of the sort of horrific, violent acts of terrorism or mass shootings by deranged people, etc., etc., are carried out with carbines and assault rifles, and, assault rifles, at least according to the media, right? Carbines, shotguns, stuff like that. Very, very rarely will someone do a mass shooting with a Glock. Not to say that it doesn't happen, but it doesn't make the Glock the world's most deadliest weapon. It just makes it a firearm, just like any other, and, people will abuse anything they have and they can, because that's the world we live in. You give someone chocolate, he will die of diabetes from it. Doesn't mean we should ban all chocolate, and that the rest of the billions of people that won't die from it shouldn't have access to it. It's the same with handguns. If you are going to allow other types of weapons, there's no reason for handguns to be vilified in this sense, right? I mean, I'll start from my own personal example. The only reason I bought a rifle is because I couldn't buy a handgun. Or at least, I could, but they required 3 years of sports shooting and competitions in order to provide sufficient proof that I'm not going to abuse the weapon, or I'm not going to misuse it, and that I have a valid reason for buying it. Here's a question: how the hell do I shoot with a pistol I haven't bought yet? What? And yeah, that was the reason. For rifles, it was a lot simpler. Just pass the exam, get the license, grab the gun, you're done. Right, register it and all that paperwork, you're done. It's simple. Now, I have to be very careful about what I say here, because the videos like this can be used against me in a court case. Let's just say that a person in a similar position as me, which is literally every other person in this country, because the law's the same for all of us, if he can acquire a rifle or a handgun, he can do the same thing with both of them, in terms of legal use or illegal use. Right? It's not like me having a long-range rifle suddenly stops me from doing things that I would do with a pistol. Yeah? I can compete with it. Obviously, it's a different discipline. It's a different, the different range that you shoot at, of course. But I can compete with it. I can use it for self-protection, for self-defense. Well, no, I can't, but I can't use a pistol legally for self-defense here either, so, that whole thing's out the window. No, legally, technically, you can, after someone shot you and hit you. Yeah, that's the only scenario in my bloody country where you can legally use self-defense, or legally use a firearm for self-defense. Yeah, I know. We don't like to talk about it either. Yeah, that's the one scenario, right? So you have to put on body armor and wait for him to shoot you, and then, only then, can you legally use a firearm. It's... how they prove that in a court of law? Look, don't ask. That's why, cases like that in court go on for literally 20, 30 years. Most people die of old age before it's settled, so yeah. And obviously they lose an obscene amount of money in the whole process. But hey. There's actually a joke going around on forums and stuff about with people that love guns and stuff. If someone breaks into my house with a weapon, I'm gonna go, dude, just please shoot me. Dude, the legal side of this and the torture that I'm gonna endure for the next 40 years is not worth whatever is about to happen. Just shoot me. It's honestly, I understand. It's not far from the truth. It's obviously it's a joke and it's an exaggeration, but like I said, not even that far from the truth. Anyways, that was my little gun rant. Point of the matter is, pistols can be used differently to other types of firearms. They are different. They are more easily concealed. But that doesn't mean they are the devil and that they should be banned, whereas semi-automatic rifles shouldn't. Nothing, like I said, nothing should be outright banned. I am in favor of having some type of control over who purchases firearms, having some type of background check, having some type of vetting system where, not everyone could just walk into a store and go, I want that. Sorry. Sorry about that. Oof. My lungs hurt when I talk for a long time, and anyways. Where was I? Yeah, not everyone should just be able to buy anything, but at the same time, blanket bans don't make sense, and the way pistols are being treated currently in most of Europe also doesn't make sense. And it doesn't help, it doesn't stop anything. We've seen that most terrorist acts that happen in Europe happen with illegal weapons, and happen with a wide variety of instruments that can do harm, from firearms to explosives to melee weapons to anything. The argument that, if pistols were legal, then this and this would have been a far more deadlier incident doesn't make sense, because if the person, wanted to use a firearm, he would have bought one illegally. He would have bought one legally, which, again, like I said, doesn't really happen, but he could have bought one legally that wasn't a pistol and did the same thing. Yeah. I mean, that said, you can also buy, there's nothing really stopping you. Like, concealed carry is also, I think, a little bit overrated. If you want to do an armed robbery, you can just buy a gun bag, put your AK in it, walk over to wherever you want to do the robbery, pull your weapon out the gun bag, and, get on with it. It's not like having a pistol gives you magical powers of immediately being able to do something. Doesn't make sense, At least, obviously, all of this will depend on the law of the given country. Here, you are allowed to transport a weapon in a gun bag, as long as you keep the ammunition from the weapon separate. Of course, a police officer might not necessarily check. Matter of fact, I haven't been a gun owner for a long time, but I've never been stopped and asked what's in the bag. I've never been asked to show anyone what's in the bag, and how I keep my weapons and stuff. Matter of fact, I know a bunch of people that, the letter of the law is one thing, but in practice, it's a whole other thing. On paper, you're supposed to do this, this, and this at home when you're keeping the rifle. In reality, it's your house, and nobody's going to check. Not without a warrant, and to get a warrant, you need to do something bad, and you need to break the law, and if you break the law, you lose your weapon anyway, so, it's kind of pointless. Really, anything behind any type of instruction on how you should keep your weapons at home is kind of pointless, because nobody is allowed to check. Or nobody will check. Chances are nobody will ever check. Anyways, I should go to bed now and rest up. That was my rant on pistols, because I'm annoyed. I'm annoyed at how they're treated by the media. I'm annoyed at how they're treated by the people who write laws, which, unfortunately, I genuinely want to say in all cases, but not quite sure, because there are places with relatively okay and sensible gun laws. But anyways, in the vast majority of cases, the people that write these laws have never held a firearm in their life, and yeah, it shows. It definitely shows. Also, can we talk about how ironic it is that a weapon classified as a personal defense weapon cannot be used for personal defense? Can't be really bought either. Might want to change that classification just to be a bit more transparent about the entire thing. Yeah, you know, it's sad. It genuinely is. But between me and you, before you start feeling too bad about me, there is an out. Video's over, by the way. Okay, gun rant done. I do want to talk to you about one more thing. It's kind of funny, because I know a lot of people are very sympathetic towards, people like myself who live in countries that aren't exactly gun friendly, but do have a genuine passion about firearms and military history and stuff like that. People are like, oh man, you should move to my place, we can do this and this. And I've received, since the last sort of semi-viral video that I made about guns and the 60-second short, it's got like up to 1 million views now. I don't know, something along those lines, maybe 500,000. I didn't check in ages, don't really care. But yeah, I received like literally thousands of messages of support being like, dude, I'm so sorry this happened to you. If you want, you can move to insert country here, or most of these people from the US, like, we shoot guns in the backyard and the police are in on it and they know, and it's fun and everyone like respects each other in that regard and yada yada yada, and like that's terrific. Thank you for your kind words and all of that. Like I said, I responded to each and every one of those. That's awesome, but there is an out for me. Under the new law, which has been somehow snuck past all the uptight people in government. Sorry, I need to cut again. Sorry about that. The law has been snuck past all the, control freak and uptight people upstairs, allowing pretty much anyone to obtain a collector's license. A collector's license is literally one piece of paper. Literally one piece of paper with a signature and a stamp on it that lets you buy any type of weapon, not automatic, in the country without any paperwork. How cool is that? Now, how do you get a collector's license? Well, you need to get 5 regular licenses. Yeah. Bit silly, bit pricey, but at the same time, it does make sense. If you had the money, the nerve, and fulfilled all the conditions to get 5 of them the long way, the harder way, why bother getting the 6th one? It's not like anything changed, and besides, if at any point in your life you break any of the conditions for holding a license, the 5 regular ones, you lose all of your weapons forever. So, this way is just, you're just cutting the middleman, which makes a lot of sense. But here's the thing. It also gets around certain things. Acquiring 5 regular firearms, or with a regular license, is not that difficult, because you can buy 5 hunting rifles. And hunting rifles are easy to buy. You can also get 5 extremely cheap mil-surplus hunting rifles. A World War II Mosin or something. Mind you, they're a bit more pricey now because the historical value and whatnot. You can also get like 5 weapons off of relatives and people who want to get rid of their rifles and will sell them for dirt cheap, and you can buy weapons that are in no condition to be shot, but are technically hunting rifles, or technically carbines, or whatever. They can even be broken. I mean, the half the barrel could be missing. It's still technically a working weapon. Whether it works or not currently does not factor into the equation. You still need the same paperwork. So, you buy 5 dirt cheap hunting rifles, or dirt cheap carbines, you get the collector's license, and you walk into a store and go, right, I want that, and that, give it. And you take it. The only extra condition on top of that is you need to have storage space and, the appropriate, whatchamacallit, safety mechanisms, I guess, for keeping those weapons, which the police will check every time you buy a new weapon. So they will come to your house and they will check to make sure that you have conditions to store that weapon. That means one safe for ammunition, and one locker for ammunition, and one safe for the actual weapon itself. Means every weapon will need to have a safe and a separate storage area locked on the key for ammunition keeping. And that's it. The only downside is it's pricey. You will need a lot of money. The license itself, I think, is around $300, just for the privilege of, picking it up. The storage space that you're going to need to, acquire, and the keys and the safes and all that are also pretty pricey. But if you have enough money, you can get it. If you have enough money, you can get it. And honestly, I think that's pretty bloody awesome. Anywho, thank you very much for watching, ladies and gents. Like, subscribe down below if you enjoyed the video and want to stay tuned with the rest of the series, or rather, not the rest of the series, but the rest of the content that I produce on the channel.